Hey y'all, I'm Deidra and this is Shade Tree Read. So this is going to be the quarterly wrap up. I have not done a wrap up since like July of last year, I think. And I keep putting it off because I want to catch up. I want to catch my channel up to where my Goodreads and such is and Storygraph is, but I just don't see that happening, and I really want to move on with my content, and I feel like it's holding me back that I keep trying to go back and catch up. So we're just going to start clean from the beginning of 2022 and go forward, and hopefully I can do quarterly wrap-ups instead of wrap-ups every month. Maybe that way I can keep myself a little bit more on task and won't feel so bad about being behind. So I am going to use what I have on Storygraph. I think it will, like, as far as 2022, I think it'll match with my Goodreads, but I'm just going to use Storygraph because I kind of just like how it looks a little bit better. So far, as of today, I've read 17 books in 2022, and this is about halfway through March, and I don't think I finished anything yet this month, but I'm in the middle of some pretty thick ones. So I want to go ahead and cut it off here and then tell you what I'm currently reading, and then we'll maybe talk about my plans for the next quarter. With that said, let's jump into what I've read, and let's do it in order of when I read it. So I'm sorry if the angle changed a little bit. I thought I would take my thumbnail pic real quick, and I realized that this is not really a good place because the sun or the light is behind me, so it doesn't want to focus for a picture. It'll focus for a video, but it won't focus for a picture, so I apologize for the angle change. Anyway, so in January I read 7 books apparently. I read Smitten by Nicole Falls. I gave it 3.25 stars. There's not a whole lot to say about it. I liked it. It took me a long time to read it. Just because I use romance and the books that I have on my Kindle as something to wind down with at the end of the day, or a palate cleanser, and I read like 2 or 3 pages at a time whenever I'm physically reading from my Kindle. So it took me a really long time to get through it, but it's really nothing to do so much with the book as it is with how I go about reading it, or how I went about reading it. The next book I read was called Untitled Child of Wonder, Volume 1, and that was a graphic novel that Ashley from the Bookish Realm had recommended to me. And let me just say that the story for Iyanu was great, but the art, not so much. All the people had the exact same face. They had different clothing. Their hair was rendered differently, and I like the way the hair was done, but the faces, the characters looked exactly alike, or they looked like cousins. They looked like siblings. There needed to be more variation, and it kind of had I guess you would call it a watercolor effect to the art. It just wasn't my favorite. The artwork is not exactly like what's on the cover in the actual story, but it's very similar, but it's not exactly like that. So they do that sometimes, and it's kind of disappointing when they change the art, or if it's not exactly like what you see on the cover, because it's kind of like you're not getting what they advertise. I don't know, but the story was excellent. I liked what it was about, but it wasn't my favorite. I didn't rate it because I felt like I couldn't let the art slide for the story, so I just didn't rate it because I didn't want to put a bad rating on it and maybe somebody see that rating and think that it wasn't a good story, because the story was excellent. And the art, the art is just not my personal taste. So if you like that kind of style, go for it. I didn't let you know what I was looking down at. I'm looking at my phone. I'm looking at you're not gonna be able to see. I'm looking at my phone and I'm looking at Storygraph so I can remember what I read and make sure I'm not telling you something I read last year. So the third book I read in 2022 was Dead Until Dark by Charlaine Harris. This is part of the year-long read-along that me and Bree from the Lock Booktition have started this year, and it's going to run all year. We're currently on book 3, but this is the first book in the series. I gave it 3 stars simply for the enjoyability of the world and the pacing and how fast the story moved. But I had a lot of problems with that book. If you don't know by now, I had a lot of problems with it. I had a whole vlog of reading the first book. There's lots of spoilers, so if you don't want spoilers, don't watch that vlog. But that had happened. And then the next book I read was another graphic novel, Bitter Root Volume 3. I gave that a 3.5, and I think I gave it a 3.5 because I felt like there was a lot of beating around the bush of the story. If I'm rating it strictly on the art, I can't give it less than 5 stars for the art. The art is just mwah. And the first 2 volumes, I gave those first 2 volumes, I think 5 stars each, but I didn't love the story that was told in the third. I'm not sure if we're gonna get another one. It seems like maybe we should, but I didn't feel satisfied in the end, and I didn't feel like much of a story was told in the volume. I should probably go back and watch Bree and Ashley from the Lock Booktition. No, Lock Booktition is Bree, Ashley is the Bookish Realm, but I should probably go back and watch their discussion from their Realm of Comics video and see if there's anything that I missed out on and didn't pick up and mark the rating down for it. But just me personally, without delving into other reviews, anybody else's videos or other written reviews anywhere, I gave it 3.5. I still think it's highly worth reading. For me personally, in the way that I like my serialized comics to go, and based off what we got in the previous 2 volumes, 3.5. Next, I read The 100,000 Kingdoms, which is the first book, right? Yeah, The 100,000 Kingdoms is the first book in the Inheritance Trilogy. Chloe from Thistle and Verse and Shay from Shay with Hobbies are hosting a read-along of the series, and we're currently on the last book. But this was the first book and the first time I've read this book. I gave it 4.75 stars. Why didn't I give it 5? I don't think I gave it 5 stars because I didn't feel love for or super connected to any of the characters in the way that I did the 5th season, which is not necessarily it's not fair per se to compare those two because the books are totally different, but I definitely felt some kind of personal connection with characters in the first book of the Broken Earth trilogy. Not so much even now that I'm on the 3rd book of the Inheritance trilogy. I still love it. I still think it's an excellent book. I think the writing is excellent, but that little extra 0.25 of feelings I didn't get. Don't come for me. Still gave it any other, I think on Goodreads I gave it 5 stars because you can't give decimals or fractions of a star on Goodreads. But yeah, on Storygraph I rated it 4.75 stars. I'm not telling you much about any of these books just simply because you can go and check my Goodreads or my Storygraph account and read my reviews if I wrote one. But I am trying to work on how I talk about books because I don't necessarily consider myself a reviewer. I really just consider myself a reader. But I want to be able to do better with how I talk about books. So until I get a better grasp on how to do that and what I want things I want to make sure to say and be consistent with it. I'm just going to kind of skim over and just give you my general feelings in these wrap-up videos. Just give you my general feelings, and if there's anything really good or really bad that sticks out to me about the book, especially these older ones. And January is not that long ago, but I've read quite a few books, I feel like. And so sometimes stories start to, like, they start to blend together. You start to forget some of the finer details. And until I get a better grasp on that, I don't wanna ruin the experience for anybody by giving spoilers. So the next book that I read in January is The Dangers of Smoking in Bed, which is a short story collection by Mariana Enriquez. And I consumed this via audiobook, and not sure if that was the best way to consume it, but I really enjoyed my experience reading it. I gave it 3.5 stars. Not sure if I said that already. And basically this is a horror, thriller, mystery collection of stories. That very first story really like grabbed me by the neck, and it had me super intrigued, and I didn't realize that it was an anthology until after I got about halfway through the second story and realized that it didn't make sense. There was different characters and stuff, so I went back and read the synopsis, or actually I think I just looked at the cover, to be honest, and figured out that this was a short story and it wasn't necessarily supposed to make sense together. But one thing I will say about how I came to read this book is, as I've said a few times on this channel, I have a book club with a bunch of other people in the community, and it's called the Only Good Book Club. And this month we did like a Secret Santa type of deal where somebody picked a book for other people to read. One member picked a book for other people to read, and then we talked about it that next month. And so Yanni picked this book for me to read, and that's how I came to read it. Like, it wouldn't have been on my radar otherwise. And this is a translated work. It's translated from Argentinian, and it published in... Storygraph does not love to give you that kind of information super readily. Okay, so the audiobook for The Dangers of Smoking in Bed was published in 2009, but I'm not sure exactly if that's also when the book itself was published, the physical book was published. I had a good time. I gave it 3.5 stars. I would definitely read something by Mariana again. The last book that I read in January was Meddling Kids. And I gave this one 3.5 stars as well. I'm not exactly sure where. There's two possible places where I came up with, or there's two possible places where I might have seen this book. It's either I was just randomly scrolling on Hoopla and came across it and thought the title and the cover was kind of dope, or I saw it on, I think her name is Allie from the Hardback Hoarder. I'm sorry if I got her name wrong, but either that or she mentioned it on her channel in one of her videos in like December or January. So one of the two places, but I gave it 3.5 stars because that ending was weird, as well as the fact that I consumed it via audiobook, and it read like a script. The narrator literally would read the person's name and would do everything but say semicolon and then a sentence. So it would be like, Jane, blah 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 blah, John, blah 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 blah, Sam, blah blah blah, the dog, roo, roo, roo. And then it would just go back and forth. Like, the narrator would announce who was speaking and then say the line, and then the speaker and then say the line, and then even like the parentheses, it seems like they would say the window rattled and stuff like that. So that took me out of the element of the story a bit. It didn't continued throughout the entirety of the book, but it continued through at least the first half, and it took away from my experience. If they had just narrated it and changed the voices, that probably would have been way better. Also, maybe if I had been physically reading it, I would have known what the author was trying to do with that scenario, because there is a group of kids, literally meddling kids, a group of crime solvers, kind of in the vein of Scooby-Doo and the Mystery Machine, and there is a dog that is present. I won't say much more about that, but it had a lot of potential. I wanted it to be better than it was. That ending was ridiculous, and I'm not sure if I would read something else by the author, which I haven't mentioned, is Edgar Sentero. I think the person has other works out, but for the 12-hour audiobook, the ending that I got was just super unsatisfying, and I kind of wanted my time back, but I gave it a 3.5 stars. So okay, in February we had a lot going on. We had some read-alongs, some other read-alongs, additional read-alongs. We had Black History Month. We had the second book in the Sookie Stackhouse series, and for the most part we had a great time. I think I found another all-time favorite book in the month of February, so let's get into what I read. First thing listed here is The Poppy War by R.F. Kuang. So Erica from The Broken Spine is hosting a read-along of that series. We're currently on book 2, and I don't know exactly when the discussion for book 2 is going to be, but if I can figure that out, I'll put it on the screen. There's several other co-hosts, as I mentioned in my announcement video for participating in the Missy Elliott readathon. I will put their names in the description box so you can check out their channels and their content. But I gave the reread of The Poppy War 4 stars. I'm not sure what I rated the first time around. I had a lot more trouble getting over how... I had a lot more trouble dealing with Ren as a character, which I don't think she's supposed to be likable, don't get me wrong, and I don't need to like my main characters, but I do want to be able to understand them a little bit. I want to be able to at least be like, okay, I get it. And there are several points in the Poppy War where I just like, girl, please, like, grow up, get it together. She's very rash, and she hasn't learned that rashness causes problems. Like, I don't know how she hasn't learned that lesson yet, but she hasn't, and so we're here. Currently, like I said, I'm on book 2 currently, about halfway through it. I'm still having the same problems with her, but for The Poppy War, which I read in February, 4 stars. I recommend people to read that series if you like military fantasies. There is some pretty heavy, gory things that happen in the book. It's not anything more than happens in real life as far as wartime goes, but I don't read a lot of that kind of thing, so it did take me aback to reread that particular chapter and particular scene. Doesn't bother you, but for me, it really, I needed to take caution when I got to that part, and I knew it was coming, but lots of people have put content warnings on their reviews, and go check those out before jumping into it if you haven't read it yet. The next book I read in February was the second book in the Sookie Stackhouse series. It is Living Dead in Dallas. I gave it 2.5 stars. I didn't do a vlog of this one. Excuse me. There was more racial things that went on in the second one. Not additional, but like continued racial stuff. One of my favorite characters from the show had met on some misfortune in the second book. We get introduced to the other favorite character I have from the show in this book, but she's not a very big part of the story. Anyways, it was fine. It's really not a whole lot to write home about. I'm continuing with the series, but I gave the second one 2.5 stars. Not sure if I said that already. Then this is a book that I read for the Missy Elliott Readathon. I read Through the Fire by Donna Hill, which happened to be the third book in the series. And I also talked about this book on me and Ashley's Black Love channel called Now That's What I Call Black Love. I reviewed this book and the book after it, which is After Hours Attraction by Kiana Alexander. I gave both of them 3.5 stars. And I did pretty full reviews on that channel, so go and check that out if you want to know more about my thoughts. Then in February, we continue with the Inheritance Trilogy read-along with Chloe and Cachet. We read The Broken Kingdoms, which is the second book, and I gave that solidly 5 stars. Again, I don't really relate to anybody in this series that I've met so far, even where I'm at in the third book. But something about the way Jemisin tells the story just really gets me, and I really loved it. So that was 5 stars. And then we found an all-time favorite. Top 5. We put it in our top 5. We have to. And that is Long Division by Kiese Layman. It was narrated by Sean Crisden, which I consumed it via audiobook, but I have to get my hands on a physical copy of the book because it's a book within the book, and you can turn it one way and read it, and then like flip it, I think maybe like flip to the back and turn it over, and then it's another book, and you get to read the book within the book, I believe. So I'm excited to own that. I can't wait to reread it. I know it's going to be just as good as it was the first time on the second time, and the third and the fourth, and I am just so happy to have been introduced to this book via the Missy Elliott Readathon and Cachet. And I think Bree has also read it. It touched me. It was black as hell, and I loved it. The next book and the last book I read in February, or completed in February, is Network Effect, which is the 5th book in the Murderbot Diary series. That is written by Martha Wells. And so far, Kevin R. Free has narrated all the books in the series that I've read so far, and he does an excellent job, or they do an excellent job. I'm sorry, I don't mean to gender them. I don't know their gender. But it is the longest book that I've read in the series so far. It was like, whereas the other audiobooks are like 4 or 5 hours, this one was like 12 hours or something like that. And I was a little afraid of how I would get on with it, because the thing that I like about the Murderbot series, or Murderbot Diaries, is how succinct those stories are. You get in, get out, and you go on. And I was worried that it would drag, but for me it didn't, because I still read it in like 2 and 3 hour chunks, so I never got like bored. And maybe you would get a little bored if you read it straight through, or if you read it in larger sittings. I don't know, it didn't really lag for me, but I liked it. I gave it 4 stars, and there's nothing I can say about it that's not a spoiler for previous books in the series. You definitely want to have read the other books in the series before you get to this one. I don't feel like this series is one that you can read in whatever order, because your knowledge sort of builds on itself, and your understanding of Murderbot is, like I said, it builds on itself, and he builds relationships, and they all kind of, each one of the missions, or books, kind of build upon themselves and connect. And I don't think you would know what was going on or enjoy it if you haven't read them in order. So that was it for February. Let's see what we've got going so far in March. So earlier I lied. I didn't think that I completed a book or anything in March so far, but I have. I've completed 3 books according to Storygraph, and that's not a lie. Well, it's kind of a lie. We'll get to it. So The Other Black Girl I read. I was gonna put it in a different project that I haven't filmed yet, so I don't want to mention it in case I have to change what it ends up looking like altogether. But I ended up picking it up because my hold for the audiobook came in from the library, and Missy Elliott readathon was already over, and I really wanted to know what all, not necessarily the hype, but I wanted to know what all the fuss was about with this book. And I ended up giving it 2.5 stars, not because the writing was bad. There wasn't really anything particularly offensive that I can remember right off the top of my head about this book. It was just like, it wasn't written for us. It was not written for us. It was not written for us. Not sure who it was written for. It did not tell us anything we didn't already know about publishing. It did not put any particular stand or ideas out or how to fix it out. It didn't. My main gripe would be a spoiler. If I mention it here, I'm thinking about doing a standalone review video for it. Put a comment down below if you think you want to hear my spoiler thoughts about The Only Black Girl, so that I can tell you all my problems with it. I thought the writing was fine. It's not that I thought the writing was bad. And I think it's a very compulsively readable book. But again, it wasn't for us. The next book that I completed in March is A Dirty Valentine by Nicole Falls. I have, what's the name of this series? I think they're called Holiday Shorts is what she calls this little series, with a bunch of novellas or short stories, like around 20-30 pages. But I have also started A Good Luck Fuck by her, and that's like St. Patrick's Day themed. This is Valentine's Day themed, obviously. But I gave it 4 stars. It was cute. I love Nicole's writing. Like, I really get into her to like get me right and put me back at center and stuff like that. So 4.0 stars for A Dirty Valentine. And then the last book I've completed so far in 2022 is Waiting to Exhale. Full disclosure, I did not actually read it from cover to cover. I stopped at about page 240 something out of 400 pages because it was putting me in a slump, y'all. I was not expecting that reading experience that I got, rereading experience. This would be the second time I've read Waiting to Exhale. But the women, the characters in this book were way more bitter than I ever remember them being. Like, extremely more bitter than I remember them being. And I did not have a good time. It was gonna put me in a big slump if I didn't put it down. So what I ended up doing, since I made it more than halfway through the book, I went ahead and read the last 5 pages of the book, before the acknowledgments and stuff. And my intention was to read the ending and figure out what happened and see if I wanted to go back and really figure out how we got there. And I just did not care. I didn't care. By the time I don't know how much more fussing and cussing could have gone on, because I got a good summary within those last 5 pages. I got a summary of where everybody was at the end of the book. By the end of the book, like everybody, Robin, Savannah, Gloria, and is it Bernadette? Lord, I don't forgot them. Yeah, so in the last 5 pages, I got a complete understanding of where Savannah, Gloria, Bernadine, and Robin were with their lives. Like, I got a perfectly good summary within the last 5 pages, and I didn't need to be suffering through all their changes. Like, I marked it as read. I gave it 3.0. No. Yeah, I gave it 3 stars. A solid, even 3 stars. Just because of what it did for literature when it first came out. I can definitely see why it is as popular as it is. But this is, for me, this was a case of where the movie was better. And the movie helped iron out all the kinks that the book had for me, and I am sad that I walked away from the reread feeling like that. But just letting you know, I didn't want to go in a reading slump, so I skipped to the last 5 pages. So, to quickly talk about what I am currently reading, I am reading A Good Luck Fuck by Nicole Falls. Like I said, I treat that's on my Kindle, so I read a couple pages every night before I go to sleep. And it's taken me quite a while to get through it because that's how I read it. I'm further than this, but I'm about 25-30% into The Kingdom of Gods by N.K. Jemisin, the third book in the Inheritance trilogy, the finale. I'm a couple pages into chapter 6, and I need to get through, I'm not sure how many chapters I'm supposed to get through this week, but I've got some catching up to do. Really enjoying it so far. Not sure where it's going. I'm still confused. So maybe I'm not confused and I just don't want to admit that what's needing to happen is going to happen, but we're holding out hope. And then the other thing, the last thing that I'm currently actively reading is The Dragon Republic. Might have already said that. That's also by R.F. Kuang. It's the second book in that series. Having a hard time with Ren. I think I did say that already. And I haven't gotten to my favorite parts of that book. I'm pretty sure I gave it 5 stars the first time around. And this has been my favorite book between the Poppy War and Dragon Republic. I've liked the Dragon Republic more. And I haven't read The Burning God yet, but I needed to have reread the first 2 before I got to the finale. I'm having an okay time with it. I'm reading it via audiobook. I don't have a physical copy of it. Not sure if I'll get it, but if I do get it, I want it to match this paperback copy that I already have. We'll see. I'll probably get it at half price books or something if I do purchase it. It's fine. Other books that I want to get to before the month's up is Pet by Akwaeke Emezi. I want to read Honey Girl by Morgan Parker. I want to start over and complete This Present Darkness by Frank Peretti. I have an audiobook of Mind, Body, and... I have an audiobook of Body and Soul by Abby Collette, who is the author of A Deadly Inside Scoop, which I enjoyed okay. But this is another series, or another book by that author that I wanted to get to, and I currently have the audiobook loaned from my library. And on Hoopla, I already told you about Honey Girl. I also have Blackwater Rising by Attica Locke that I want to get to. I have to start Club Dead and finish it this month. We'll have sprints on the 22nd of this month, and discussion on the 25th. And that is pretty much it for what I really have a burning desire to read. Oh, for the Only Good Book Club, we have Wayward Lives, Beautiful Experiments. That is our pick for March, and I have an audiobook for it. Haven't started it yet, but kind of excited to get to it. I think it's a kind of tough read. There's some difficult subject matters being discussed. So I'm trying to be nice to myself and don't get myself all worked up and before going into it, but I want to get to that soon. And that's pretty much it for what I want to read immediately for the rest of March. The next time you'll hear me talk about books that I've read will be sometime in June or early July. And look out for other videos for the rest of March. I have, like I said, if you want me to do that review of the Other Black Girl, leave me a comment. Thanks for watching.